Hello, I'm George from Ireland, and here I am in Lime Street, Camden, in London. Behind me is the house where Joe Slovo and his wife Ruth First lived, 1966 to 78. So Joe Slovo was born in Lithuania in 1925, and he emigrated to South Africa as a small child. He was Jewish, and Ruth First was born in South Africa into a Jewish family. So the white community there was then up to 30% of the population, and half of them spoke English and half of them spoke Afrikaans, i.e. Dutch. And so people who were neither of British or of Dutch descent tended to join the Anglophone community. Anyway, so they grew up in families without that much money. Joe Slovo, he joined the South African Army in the Second World War. He was a volunteer, not a conscript, in the Springbok Brigade, the Springbok being obviously the symbol of South Africa at the time. So he served in various theatres of the war. He came back after the Second World War, and the Nationalist Party soon won the election. The black majority were excluded from political rights at the time. The National Party being the party of Afrikaner nationalism, as in those of Dutch blood. And so they wanted to discriminate against the black majority. The black community was already discriminated by law, but this new system called apartheid, as in apartness, was introduced, and it was more extensive and more systematic. So he was horrified about this, saying, well, we were supposedly fought this war for democracy, for liberty, for justice, all the rest of it, and we have this a very inequitable system in South Africa. Moreover, the people in charge are those who openly prayed for a Nazi victory. As a Jewish person, he was disgusted by racialism. He didn't want anyone to suffer racism, and that included black people, of course. So he joined the South African Communist Party. He rather overlooked the numerous atrocities committed by communist tyrannies around the world, and pretended there was no systemic racism in countries like China or the Soviet Union. Anyhow, he and his wife, they worked with the ANC, African National Congress, which originally for black people only, but then adopted its Freedom Charter in the 50s, saying it's for South Africans of all races, and they wanted just simply racial equality, a multiracial democracy. So the ANC was banned, the SACP was banned, this is during the Second World War, and the apartheid government tried to pretend that anyone who wanted racial equality was a communist. Of course, there were some white supremacists in the United States who lapped that up. They were persecuted, these two. The ANC for 50 years had asked for meetings with the South African government to improve things, and the South African government had refused to do so. There was a Minister of Bantu Affairs, as in for the black community. It was also white who was appointed Minister of Bantu Affairs. So no improvement was forthcoming, and black people were being evicted from their houses and so on without compensation. So the ANC began a bombing campaign, not intended to kill anyone, simply to damage infrastructure, power stations and things like that. But inevitably mistakes were made, some people were killed, some ANC bombers were killed. So these two, they moved abroad, they were here for a while. Ruth First, I mean, her name was originally, first name was originally Fürst, as in the German word for prince, not a royal prince, but a prince of a princely family. They later to move to Mozambique, that erstwhile Portuguese colony where anti-colonial fighters had defeated a Portuguese authority and established a communist state. So the ANC and its armed wing, Umkhonto we Sizwe, meaning the Spear of the Nation, established bases in Mozambique with the blessing of the Mozambican government, raiding into South Africa. But the South Africans, then they set up Renamo, which is like National Resistance of Mozambique, this anti-communist guerrilla group or terrorist group, as the Mozambicans would view it. But when she was, I think she was in Tanzania, Ruth First, when she received a little present from BOSS, Bureau of State Security, as in a parcel bomb, which killed her. So that was the end of her. So Joe Slovo, who was living in London earlier on, as I said, and so finally apartheid came to an end, and because he was a white who was prominent in the ANC, that proved that the ANC was not anti-white. And I've even seen footage of ANC fighters in the 80s shouting, Joe Slovo is our leader. So it really gave lie to the notion that the ANC was albophobic. So returned to South Africa in 1994 when democracy was established for the first time, and everyone had an equal right to vote regardless of race. He was made Minister of Housing in the first multiracial government. However, he died the next year. So that is Joe Slovo. A plaque here was unveiled by Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Okay, that is enough from me, so please follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Look up my English law channel, I teach people law online. Look up my British poesy channel, where I declaim poetry. and book guided tours with me, and choose online lessons with me in English as a foreign language, English literature, history, politics, religious studies, French and law. And I'll translate from French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, Russian or German for you, particularly legal documents. Toodle pip.